Ooh, that was spicy. Wow. So I just ended up putting on the new Garmin Rally XC pedals so that I can get power meter on the gravel bike here. And I just held myself accountable to that power with some low cadence, 4 times 4 minutes, 260 watts at 60 RPM. That's grinding. Something that a lot of people ask is like, do I have to have power? No, you absolutely don't have to have power. I actually recommend that most people start with heart rate, but it is beneficial. The question is like, is it mandatory? I look at things in triathlon from the standpoint of there's probably 5% of the things that you hear about out there that contribute to 95% of your results. But there's 95% of the things that you hear about might only contribute to that last 5% of the results. So people end up putting more emphasis on things that don't give as good a result. What I want to go through today are the things that I obsess about that a lot of people probably aren't, and that you probably aren't, that I think make a really big difference in all of your endurance performance. So all right, the first thing that I get really obsessed about is bike fit. And you might say like, whoa, Taren, like, I've had a bike fit. Yeah, I'm cool, I do it. Well, I want to show you something here. These here are the Solstar carbon fiber cycling insoles. I tried these about 2-3 years ago, and I put them in every single one of my shoes. What I ended up finding is that peak power was way higher when I would try to sprint using these insoles versus even structured insoles, let alone just the standard insoles that you get. Oh, I gotta show you something here. On a triathlon bike, we have really just 3 points of contact and interaction with the bike. We have the pedals, we have the seat, we have the handlebars. And everything that we do with our body is completely meant to transfer the power that we're putting out from our body into the bike. And if you have your bike position dialed in as well as you possibly can, you're gonna transfer more power into the pedals and less is going to leak side to side and move around. You're gonna be able to stay in that aero position longer with less shifting around, which is gonna make a huge difference because about 85% of the aerodynamic drag that we have to push through the air is actually made by our body. So the more aero we can make that, the better. And the more comfortable we can be in that position, the better we're going to be able to run. So in my case, I don't just get a bike fit, I obsess over a bike fit. I do things like I make sure that I have the most structured, stable insoles in my shoes that I possibly can so that my contact with the pedals is good. I will go through a saddle fit process where I've tested as many as 12 saddles, and then we'll go back and forth with tiny little millimeter increments here. Before Canyon had a super adjustable cockpit, I spent hundreds of dollars of my own money to get an adjustable cockpit and then even customized it beyond that to make sure that all of my contact points were dialed in. It's not just about getting a bike fit, it's about making sure that you are as comfortable in the aero position as you are in the road position. The next thing that I am obsessed over is heart rate monitoring and making sure that my low heart rate workouts are actually low heart rate workouts. There's a couple of things that I do that I find is different than most people. First, most people aren't using a wrist-based heart rate monitor, which is good. If you are using a wrist-based heart rate monitor, it's not going to be super accurate for running. I find in my testing that it's perfectly fine for steady state stuff like being around the house or biking, but when you start jostling this thing on your wrist a lot, the accuracy can be off by as much as 30 or 40 beats. So I absolutely have this heart rate monitor on almost all the time for every single workout that I do, besides swimming. That's a topic for another video. Now, some of the things that I do that are different than other people is, number one, I don't really obsess. You might not think this, but I tend not to worry about getting that 80-20 just right. More than anything, I tend to make sure that during times of the year when I'm not training for anything, the vast majority of my training is low intensity. And this is going to ensure that when I start adding in more race-specific preparation, that I've built up a ton of time at low intensity so that I can absorb it. And as a general rule of thumb, what I do is I make my long bikes, my long runs, recovery bikes, my recovery runs, all low intensity, and that alone is going to be probably 80% of the sessions that I've got in my training plan, and that is going to ensure that I get roughly around that 80-20. But here's the big thing that I do that is different from most people. I am militant about making sure that I stay under my heart rate cap. I use the Karvonen method to calculate my zone 2 heart rate cap, and if the group wants to run away from me, well, I guess I'm running by myself. I find people who are at a similar pace with similar low intensities. I don't adapt my training to other people's intensities, and that's what most people do. Most people go and find training groups and go like, all right, well, you know, it is kind of a low intensity ride, and what happens in most groups is one person surges, and if the group is large enough and not everyone is on board with keeping it low intensity, somebody else is going to surge, and then another person's going to surge, and then before you know it, you are in zone 3. Zone 3, and this is going to accumulate tons of lactic acid, tons of cortisol. You're going to be more susceptible to injury. You are going to be less able to do those super high intensities when you need to do the high intensity efforts that actually go ahead and make you faster. You're not going to be teaching your body how to be metabolically flexible by burning carbohydrates as well as fat. There's just so many things that happen when you get out of that low intensity training for the vast majority of your training. So when I do low intensity training, it is low intensity training, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, and that is not what most people do. The next thing that I really focus on is related to a little bit of me time. A lot of people have seen me talk about yoga recently. Now, this isn't because I think yoga itself is a performance enhancer. Over the last few years, what I have tried is Wim Hof breath work. I've tried meditation. I have tried yoga specifically. And is breath work one of those things that is 95%, or is yoga one of those things that amounts to 95% of results, or is meditation? Jury's out for me, but what I've personally found is that about 5-6 years ago, when life started getting a little bit busier, when I became a little bit more of a growed up, I started feeling this sense of busyness and a little bit of buzz. And what I found is that when I came into workouts, I was not as fresh, I wasn't as focused, I wasn't as calm and focused on executing the workout the way that it needed to be executed. So I missed a lot more workouts. I was sore a lot more. My sleep was sort of battling with the training load. As I would train more, I would get a little more anxious, accumulate a little more cortisol, and then I would not sleep as well. So then I wasn't absorbing the training as well. What I ended up finding is that as long as I take about 10 minutes of me time every single day, whether it be breath work, whether it be just strict meditation, or whether you do what I'm doing now, which is kind of combining meditation with a little bit of yoga and activation so that I'm waking up, I'm having that 10 minutes of me time, my cortisol is coming down, my parasympathetic, my relaxation in the body is increasing, which is then going to allow me to stay healthy and thus absorb the training and execute it really well because I'm less buzzy. I think that triathletes really need to focus on this offset of training load. We tend not to struggle with this, but we also then need to balance that out with training recovery. And having a little bit of me time and a little bit of quiet time is a really big part of that. Also, look at this. I can do this. I can actually sit cross-legged now. The next major issue that I see triathletes getting wrong is as it relates to swimming. When I first started trying to really improve my swim, I did what most people do and I joined a master's swim program. And it got me a little bit more comfortable with doing workouts, but it didn't really improve my swim much, if at all, because I would go to these workouts and I would do one drill one day, and then one drill another day, and then I'd be doing 50s one day, and then I'd be doing 400s the next day. And there was really no sort of cohesive plan or any sort of sequence of, all right, we're going to take the entire group and we're going to focus on building from one drill to the next drill to the next drill to the next drill. And you might say, well, doesn't everyone have unique, different issues that they're working with? Well, yes, sort of. But when we're talking about amateur triathletes, the vast majority of us don't even have basic technique. Even like the front pack triathletes, in a lot of cases, don't have basic technique down right. I finally started making improvements when I joined the Tower 26 swim program, which is very sequential. All year round, it's this program of one skill building on the next, building on the next, building on the next. And it's what we did in our book, which, as opposed to like really structured performance level swimming, which is what Tower 26 is, this is like a structured program for proficiency, getting you to the point of being able to do a Tower 26 program or execute really intense key master swims or triathlon group swims. And the big thing that I find is that whether it is a triathlon training group, whether it is a master swim club, whether you're doing something on your own, the drills, the sequences, the distances of the swim, the intensities of the swim, they just bounce all around. And instead of creating a swim training plan, the coaches are creating swim workouts. And the workouts don't really relate to each other whatsoever. And what happens is you hear a lot of athletes that are like, oh, I'm working on this, or, oh, I think I've got it figured out this year, or well, you know what, I'm always a 37-minute half Ironman swimmer and always have been. That's because people aren't working on a program that is literally taking them, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, from one skill to the next skill to make improvements. The next thing that I do, but this is really only during periods where I'm focusing on a race build-up and I'm accumulating really big training loads, is that before I was sponsored by Garmin, you all saw me trying things like the Oura Ring and like the Whoop strap and talking a lot about HRV. Those companies are competitors to Garmin because Garmin has the body battery system, so I just don't talk about them anymore, but I still do use HRV during times of really big training. Most people don't use HRV, or they might use one of those, what I think are really overcomplicated methods that take HRV and they take your training, and then they take your body temperature, and then they take your amount of sleep, and then they also take your resting heart rate, and then they take a whole bunch of things, and then they give you a readiness factor every single day. I'm really not into all of that because I think it overcomplicates things and gives people so much information that you get paralysis by analysis. So what I like to do while I'm doing really big blocks of training to make sure I'm not going too deep into the well is we have a calculator that I'll give you at the end of this video that it takes your 7-day average HRV and compares it to your 30-day average HRV. And if that 7-day average dips under the 30-day average, it's an indication that what's happening in the last few days, the last 3 to 7 days, is a little bit too much for you. You take anywhere between 1 and 3 days of easy training as a little bit of a rest. Your HRV will likely come back over that 30-day average, and then you pick back up again. This is getting ahead of some of those issues that are really common to overtraining. That was actually the very first indication that I started getting way back at the beginning of 2020 that I had some health issues, that no matter how much we dropped down the training that I was doing, my HRV was still just going down. And that's where we said, you know what, it's time to just focus on health again because you're not absorbing the training by grinding yourself into the ground. And I think that's how I've been able to come back and be kind of sort of healthier again. It took a long time to get back around to it, but things are starting to come back around, as opposed to being one of those athletes that gets overtrained and then is boom, out of the sport indefinitely, like forever. There's lots of friends that have just lost because they're consistently injured and never coming back. The last thing that I want to point out, regardless of whether you're doing your training yourself or whether you're using a one-on-one coach or whether you're using Training Peaks or whether you are using even our app or however you are getting your training and you are sitting here on your computer just plugging away, or you're just receiving the training from a coach, what I see athletes doing, even if they're using all of the data and tracking everything and putting it into Training Peaks, or they're using a one-on-one coach, they look at every single workout as a workout. I have to design a workout, as opposed to looking at it as I am designing an overall training plan. And the thing that I obsess about when I'm looking at designing a training plan and I look at implementing training for our athletes in our app is every single session has to have a purpose. Sometimes that purpose is FTP building. Sometimes it's VO2 max building. Sometimes it's neuromuscular power building. Sometimes it's just simply recovery and getting some blood flow into the muscles. Others, it's fat burning and endurance building. Others, it's comfort at race pace and lactate tolerance. And there is a different time for each of these. And more than anything, what I see from athletes and from one-on-one coaches, regardless of what data you're using, is that they just look at a single workout and they say, all right, I am going to build workouts. As opposed to looking at a situation where like, all right, most athletes in December are at a certain level, and physiologically, what do we need them to be able to do come July, let's say, for the race, and what are the building blocks that we need to build in the athlete's body along the way, which includes rest, neuromuscular power, and they all have specific times. One of the reasons that we didn't build a one-to-one coaching business with me or with a whole bunch of coaches, even though there are lots of good coaches out there, and we built a training app, is because we can control with algorithms, making sure that everyone is doing the right purpose at the right time with the right training load, and making sure that that structure is provided to you. Come on guys, let's wrap up the video. So I promised you, there's gonna be a link in the description below to a spot that you can download the HRV spreadsheet. That's for free, you just put your email address in. If you don't want a full training plan, but you want some structure to your swimming and you're just getting started, go check out our swim book at triathlonswimfoundations.com. Link is in the description below to that. And if you say, you know what, I'm ready to do a full training plan and I want all of this structure for the swim, for the heart rate, for the overall purpose of every single workout set out for you, again, link in the description below to our training app, which you can get at app.mymotive.com. Now that these guys are done peeing and ruining the grass, I will say later, Trainiacs, and if you aren't already subscribed, hit the subscribe button below.